resident for 4 years. Some of you may recognize him as a DJ at Eagles, Art Cafe, and also the TRC Brewery. Paul is a member of the Arts Council on the board, and he has helped create many community events in Sierra County. And today you'll see a different side of him. So here's Paul Maier.
Thank you all so much for that very warm welcome. It's so exciting to see so many faces here, and I really appreciate the support. My name is Paul Maier, and today I wanted to talk to you about my project, Glass in the Dark. This is a project that brings together a variety of artistic and technical abilities. It focuses them together into what I consider to be my artistic expression. Now, I know that might sound a little presumptuous. Making YouTube videos about collecting glass and moderating communities, is that really art? But I believe it is, and I'll show you what I mean. How many of you remember Voltron? The giant robot made of 5 separate lions. Each lion has his own pilot, his own abilities, his own strengths. Individually, they are powerful, but when they come together, they form something that's greater than the sum of their parts. That's what I want you to understand about my work. My project is not art in one single regard, but it is art in the culmination of my abilities, my knowledge, my aesthetic, and my technical skill. Not all art is tangible. Music exists in time and it disappears into the air. Dance is expressed through the body. Performance happens in motion and in movement. Perhaps individually, some of my skills might not seem like art directly, but when you put them all together, they complete my artistic vision. So let me introduce you to my 5 lions. Lion 1, the visual artist. I began drawing as a child. I studied design and sculpture in college. I learned to think beyond 2 dimensions, to understand form and space. Working with wire sculptures taught me to create art outside of flat surfaces, and it changed my perspective, giving me depth and awareness. Lion 2, the filmmaker. I trained in professional video production. I understand cinematography, lighting, script writing, and editing. I know how to tell a story visually and how to make someone's eye see through the frame in a narrative. I learned how to speak directly to consumers and how to coordinate with business partners. I learned what it meant to represent a brand with integrity. Lion 4, the research and curator. I've built a collection of several thousand pieces of uranium glass that function as B-roll for an encyclopedia of glass. My collection includes incredibly scarce patterns that I've used to help build out collector databases and expand reference books. But more than that, I've studied the history, the manufacturers, and the patterns. I dedicate myself to accuracy, and I find joy in researching every piece that I talk about. Lion 5, the head. I moderate an online community with tens of thousands of members. I serve as the vice president of an international collecting club, and I create and maintain spaces where knowledge is shared and enthusiasm is welcomed. I'm building communities to be a bridge to the next generation. When these 5 abilities combined, they are Glass in the Dark. It's a multidisciplinary art practice that combines video production, photography, curation, historical preservation, and community building to document and celebrate uranium glass culture for future generations. That's what I do. And over the next 45 minutes, I want to show you how I got there. I grew up in a strict religious upbringing with extremely controlling parental supervision. There wasn't much room for self-exploration or cultural views of the wider world, but I found windows. Drawing gave me a window, and I could create the worlds that I wanted on paper, things that existed outside of the rules that I had to live under. In grade school, I would have much rather have been learning on my own than finishing any of my lesson plans. In my teenage years, music videos gave me another window, and they showed me that there were artists out there who make bold choices. They create something that was different, a combination of visual art and narrative storytelling. I became entranced with the idea of short form videos. I would play tracks of music and I could close my eyes. I could imagine the video unfolding. I could see the shots and sequences all through my mind. I need a little water. After grade school, I went to college, but I tailored my experience to learn the things that I wanted to learn. I wasn't really interested in taking a full course load. So I took design classes to understand composition, I took ceramics to think in 3 dimensions, and I took video production classes to finally learn something that I had been dreaming about doing my whole life. As a young adult, I dreamed of being a director, but from my perspective, living in Baltimore City, there was no real industry or no opportunity. There was no path that I could really understand and how to get to the dream that I had. I just knew that I wanted something, but I was also too timid to go for it. I was afraid to take big swings back then. I was angry about this, and I didn't know where my life was going to go. After college, I decided to focus on sculptural art and mixed media, while working as a waiter at the same time. In my downtime, I would sketch and write. I made wire sculptures where my drawings could come to life in 3-dimensional form. Life in Baltimore is like living on the edge. My saving grace was that I discovered John Waters, a renegade delinquent filmmaker who broke the rules, he broke the mold, he broke the law, probably some bones, and he definitely broke moral standards. I embraced this concept of radical self-expression while gleefully indulging in a life of counterculture. I even earned the nickname Danger for a period of time, but I've thankfully let that one go. I wanted to learn more about art, but I couldn't afford art school, and I knew that the city was slowly starting to kill me. Home became kind of a dead end after a while. After a few years, I knew the choice was to either leave now or to become trapped there forever. So the choice was clear. I had to step up and I had to make a big swing. As I plotted and schemed on how I could get out of Baltimore, camera phones came out. I immediately bought one, and even though I couldn't afford it, I used it to take pixelated images and videos to my heart's content. I couldn't really do anything with them because they looked so terrible, and I still have them on my hard drive, but there's not much to be done. Eventually, the flip camera came out, which was the first high-definition camera that was for personal use in 2005. I began experimenting with music video creation. I documented the year that I finally left Baltimore, and I reached out into the world to find out where I might actually belong. I was still making art in different mediums, but it was all different pieces. The lions were there, they just didn't come together to form anything. At the start of 2010, I was living in Charleston, South Carolina. I was on a travel path for several months. Through a series of dramatic events, I ended up moving to Seattle to help my sister. As a gift, she had a connection for me to get a job. So in June of 2010, I found myself at the doorstep of a company that I had idolized my entire life, Nintendo of America, the only company in the world where a delinquent like me felt like they could actually do something they cared about and do a good job at it. I became a video game tester. I was earning $10 an hour, living in an expensive West Coast city. Life was hard again, but who cares when you're actually doing something that you're passionate about? I was a temp worker. It was a role used so that they didn't have to give us benefits. I worked 11 months on, 2 months forced unemployment, and then back again if I was lucky. It wasn't ideal, but they kept asking to bring me back. Myself and hundreds of other contract workers would play video games for 40 hours a week, digging deep into research documentation or documentation used to create the game, and look for problems before they came out to the market. This was my first instance of quality control and standards. I was passionate about what I did. After 3 years of proving myself, being asked to return, and moving up into different groups, I was chosen to become a full-time employee. It was a major feat for me. About 1% of the people who work as temp workers are turned into a full-time employee, and somehow I managed to do it. I led a team of testers in the main quality control division and eventually was hired into a licensing group. I was very serious about the things that I did. During that time, I worked with publishers to coordinate AAA video game releases. I curated and maintained an online storefront. I synchronized marketing materials and campaigns with other platforms. I was fortunate enough to travel to Japan to help launch the Nintendo Switch. I traveled to Germany to help publish games for the Nintendo Switch. And I traveled across the United States doing game demonstrations at major events, learning how to speak directly to customers and the media at the same time. I learned about brand building, about establishing standards, about maintaining quality across every single touch point. I also got to voice act a little bit in their marketing material. There's supposed to be a clip that plays. Let's see if I can get it to work.
Hello, and welcome to Indie World. I'm Amber.
And I'm Paul. We're back to show you some indie games coming to the Nintendo Switch system.
Let's dive right in.
This experience gave me confidence that I had never had before. I was able to represent something that I really cared about in a passionate way and push myself beyond the skill set that I never had developed. I've never been a performer, and I've never been a public speaker either, so. With everything that I had given to my job, I was no longer able to give to myself. With the commute that was going on 13 hours a day, when I got home, I didn't have much energy or mental availability to make art. This became a period in my life where I was using my passion to make other people's art. I stopped making sculptures, I stopped experimenting with videos, and I was pouring my creative energy into a company and a product that wasn't mine. After 11 years, I was burned out. I knew I was not being true to my own artistic goals and dreams. But before I talk about leaving Nintendo, I want to go back and tell you a little bit about an artistic obsession that I have. This is with color. It slowly changed the course of my life. In 2010, I was experiencing a love affair with lime neon green. As an artist, I found myself creating my own personal trends. This was more of an extension of this radical self-expression that I learned. I had grown up being forced to wear uniforms in Christian school, uniforms at work, and dress code standards at every regular job that I had. But finally, I was in a place where that didn't apply. I was free to explore my appearance. To me, neon green had a duality. It evoked both acids, venom, and some sort of colorful toxicity, but at the same time, it also felt like growth, life, and rejuvenation. It was both a poison and a cure. I love duality. Being so drawn to the color, I started to dye my hair and then eventually my facial hair, and the color felt like the growth that I felt on the inside finally was coming out and I could wear it. I almost became my own art. One day, I found a Levi's denim jacket dyed in electric neon green. And just like any great costume piece, when I put the jacket on, it changed me from being a person on the street into being that artistic expression that I felt on the inside. If I wasn't going to make art, I was going to become the art, and I didn't realize how transformative that moment was going to be. So let's transform. I brought it. Ta-da! One day when I was deep in this lime green obsession, I used the color search function on Google Images where you can look for a specific color. And some of the results showed this weird glowing glass. It was Art Deco, a statue head, and the light seemed to be coming from inside. And I stopped at it, I stared at the screen, and I didn't realize or understand how glass could even work like that. Light was being generated from within, but how? And I needed to see it for myself. I started to look it up and learned about uranium glass. I needed to understand it better and to see it for myself. After a few weeks, I found a pattern that I thought was cool, and I bought a Summit reproduction of a Northwood tree and trough set in emerald green. I bought a black light, and to my surprise, the piece illuminated just like in the picture, but not like anything that I had seen before. The light came from within. Just like my passion, just like my obsession, just like the lime green self-expression I was living. It came from the inside. The connection had formed. That moment started the journey that I'm on today. At first, I didn't understand glass patterns. I didn't have an appreciation of daisy and buttons, novelties, opalescent glass, pattern sets. I thought decorative glass was for an older generation. As I searched more, I became interested in the style and form, especially the age of it. There's something about holding an object that's over 125 years old. How did something last for so long and survived to now? And it's got this almost supernatural quality to it. History became less distant and started being more tangible to me. Did the people who make this glass even know about the glow? There weren't black lights back then. Was this always a part of the design? I sort of thought about it as unintentional art. I've always been a thrift store shopper and an antique store hunter, a connoisseur of yard sales and flea markets. And when I figured out I could take a UV flashlight along and find the uranium glass hidden among the regular glass, I was hooked. It became more fascinating for me to find glass with history. The older and more detailed, the better. So I started to learn pattern names, manufacturers, productions of dates. I went from this glows and it looks so cool to being able to identify a 1922 Tiffin-covered compote in the brilliancy pattern. Yes. Calling back to my video game days, I needed to catch them all. In 2017, I started storing my collection in a black bookshelf, and I realized that the black background was my preferred display color. It created the aesthetic that I was looking for. The glow stood out, the glass came more of the focus. So this was the first technical innovation that I had of understanding how to present visually, to build a display and how to illuminate the glass. In early 2021, I was still at Nintendo, but the change was on the horizon. I was collecting more seriously now, taking pictures and searching for videos about uranium glass. I met a seller on eBay who had really interesting pieces that I'd never seen before. I bought 4 or 5 of them, and then I did something bold. I emailed them and said, "Please, sir, may I have some more?" For some reason, they decided to share their contact with me. It turned out it was an auctioneer living out in Lincoln City, Oregon. His name was Bob. So what did I do? I called him. Bob, the owner, invited me to visit him in his closed down auction hall. This was during the height of COVID. So I drove from Seattle for 5 hours to reach this coastal town. I arrived at night. It was in an old warehouse, maybe an old barn. Boxes were stacked so high I couldn't even see across the space. And for half a moment, I feared that I was walking into quite a dangerous situation. Although being from Baltimore, I wasn't all that worried. After navigating through the maze, I could see it in the back corner, that bright yellow-green color everywhere. 7 or 8 tables completely covered with uranium glass, more than I had ever seen in my life. Bob said, "Pick out the ones you like," and my eyes were glowing brighter than the glass under a blacklight. I purchased more than I'd ever had before that night, and as we left, Bob casually mentioned, "If you ever want to be a reseller, I'll give you a better deal." And I'd heard that one before. Unable to get it out of my mind, I visited a few months later and bought a little more. But then, as I was preparing to leave Nintendo and move to New Mexico at the end of 2021, I realized that this is an opportunity that would never come again. Even though I was stretched thin financially after buying a house, I needed to invest in this. But I am not that reckless, so I set a benchmark. I needed to prove that I could sell glass in order to bring it into the collection. And so I did. I set a goal of selling 10 pieces, and I sold them within about a week. So I called Bob one last time, and I believe that there were about 40 boxes in my car on the way back that day. I had purchased about 1/3 of his collection. One of the items that Bob sold to me was a frog butter dish. I bought the first one just because I liked it. It was cool, and it immediately caught my attention. About a week later, I found it in one of the research books that I had, and they said that there were only 75 of them made. And that didn't make any sense. How could that possibly be? But after looking up all the information, they were the same ones. it was a real deal, and the pattern was only made one time when the LG Wright factory closed down in the late 1990s. This was actually one of the most sought after pieces in the glass community, which is often referred to as the Holy Grail. Bob sold me 9. In December of 2021, with an extremely large and diverse collection, I left Nintendo, I left Seattle, and I moved to New Mexico. When I got to New Mexico, everything changed. I was finally free from this intense role that wanted me to give more of my passion. I was able to build a better studio, and I began to rehabilitate my creative spirit and my soul. I started working more on Glass in the Dark. As I'd been collecting, I wanted to learn more, and YouTube has become the go-to platform for anyone who wants to learn something. So I turned to YouTube to learn about uranium glass. There are videos, and there were back then too, but the quality is significantly lacking. It's a shaky camera, bad audio, rambling dialogue, and no real detailed shots of the glass. Just someone pointing a camera at the glass and talking about it for 20 minutes with no cuts. You really have to invest yourself to watch that. If you're not interested, you'll turn it off. Nowadays, there are some more videos about uranium glass, but this is still an issue where they only focus on the glow. Nobody really digs into it to talk about the history, the patterns, or where they come from. I like creators who go in depth. There was a reason for this, actually. Glass collecting had been on a steady decline for decades. Newer talent wasn't really entering the glass community that often. The glow within the community was starting to dim because the bridge to that next generation hadn't been built. There was no draw for them. The people who knew this glass well were aging out, and the knowledge lived in formats that younger people just struggle to access. There are some books that are out of print, VHS tapes, and static websites that look like they were original from 1998. No shade to it, but it's just not welcoming when you're younger. The information existed, but it just wasn't accessible. So not many people younger than me consumed it. I saw my opportunity, and I knew that I could do this. I had training from college, I had brand building experience from Nintendo, and I had passion. I could see exactly what was missing. And now, with this collection from Bob and the studio space in New Mexico, I finally had everything that I needed. Through trial and error, I kept tweaking my blacklight photography. I eventually tried some adhesive velvet fabric. The black velvet fabric background prevented light from bouncing and isolated the color and illuminated the glass. It allowed me to capture the glow more accurately without a washout and no glare. I also added a light guard to prevent UV light from being seen on camera, so no more purple haze. This was problem solving through design and innovation through art. The piece that's here on the right is the light box that I currently use for my setup in my studio. It's 4 foot by 4 foot, and it's not big enough. I need a bigger one now. As my tools and skills developed, I realized that I was ready to do my first video. They were short experiments, really, showcasing individual pieces and patterns, and I would just add basic text. I shared them out in small communities and to other young collectors, but the responses, they were positive, and in some communities, they were a little bit more hostile. I was too new, I was eager, and who was I to be making these videos? I knew that I had to continue my learning first. How can you respect someone that hasn't done their homework? I refused to spread misinformation and needed time to expand my overall understanding of the glass and its history. I read reference books. Some had been out of print for decades, like I mentioned. I studied old manufacturers' catalogs, and I learned to identify the subtle differences between originals and reproductions. I wanted to know what I was talking about. Finally, I was ready to be on screen. I wrote a script, got in front of the camera, and after a few weeks, my first on-camera video was ready to release. I didn't realize it before, but now I was using one of my stronger skills, my charisma and my ability to connect with people. To date, my first on-camera video is my most popular one with over 40,000 views. It's a niche hobby, uranium glass, and it's a significant number for a channel that only focuses on uranium glass itself. Getting on camera changed everything for me. And now people could see my passion and they could hear my voice and they could connect with me as a person and as a collector. While I was figuring out video, I was also deeply engaged with the online uranium glass community. Reddit was one of the best places for people my age brackets to organize and talk about glass. The R Uranium Glass subreddit had about 8,000 members back then. I helped to answer questions. People were asking, is this uranium glass? What pattern is this? Where can I find more? I find satisfaction in helping new collectors, and I knew that I wanted to make this a part of my project. In the summer of 2022, I made another big swing. I reached out to the leader of that community and asked to help them by becoming a moderator and to help build the community. The founding member told me that only one person had ever asked and that they had been turned down. But after reviewing the posts and comments that I've been making for months, they agreed to bring me on because my passion and my obsession were obvious. A year later, in 2023, the founding moderator decided to retire. They told me my passion had convinced them to leave the community in my hands, knowing that I would help it grow and guide it well. Back then, it was at 12,000 users. When I became the sole moderator, that is. Over the next few years, it's grown to 85,000 members. Actually, 87.4 as of last night. I can't take credit for it. I mean, the hobby has been gaining traction in social media. Other people have been building these bridges too. But I was there creating space for new collectors to land, answering questions, welcoming them in, and building community. I'm still in this role today, and over time I was able to interview and recruit a new team of moderators to continue the mission. Though it's not really that tangible, we collaborate regularly to create our vision for the community. I'll go as far as to call it a form of social art. During my early years of research and watching videos, I found a series from the Michigan Depression Glass Society. One video featured a presenter. His name was Zach McCamey. He was talking about dolphin candlesticks. He was entertaining, he was knowledgeable, he was passionate about uranium glass and also vintage Halloween decor, and he was openly queer. Finally, some representation for gay goth glass collectors. Yay! During the presentation, Zach mentioned he'd recently joined the board of VGCI, which is the Vaseline Glass Collectors, Inc. I looked them up and discovered that they're a real club and they hold a yearly convention. I joined the club online and made plans to attend in Pittsburgh later that year. I was excited. I hoped to meet Zach and connect with him and to learn some more. Unfortunately, in the summer of 2021, it was announced that Zach had suddenly passed away. The COVID years were very hard for everybody. It was a gut punch. Someone that inspired me and excited me and represented what I wanted to become in the community was gone. The group put out a request for someone to step into Zach's empty position on the board. And despite my anxieties and insecurities and feeling like I'm just not experienced enough, I knew it was time to take another big swing. I offered my name and I felt like it was a way to gain knowledge while also honoring someone who had inspired me. I was accepted and I formally took over his role later that year. After that partial term ended, I was asked to step into the role of vice president. As the vice president of VGCI, I provided advice to the team, technical support as well, and strategy. And I source and recruit new board members. My work with VGCI has been one about stewardship. It's a club that originated from newsletters that were being sent to everyone's house back in the early 1990s, and it's endured for over 30 years. My focus is about preserving the community and the knowledge for the future generation. One of the proudest moments that I've had with VGCI was helping with the second edition of Canary to Contemporary, which is the definitive book for Vaseline glass collectors. This was one of the ones that had been out of print for a long time. The original needed some updates, some corrections, and they wanted to add additional photos to it. So I photographed for several weeks and researched for accuracy and coordinated with the new author. The revised edition came out and I have a copy of it in the back if you'd like to see it. It contains over 100 pieces from my personal collection. This is preservation work and making sure knowledge doesn't disappear when the current generation is gone. I always wanted to capture this, I'm sorry, I also wanted to capture the experience of being at this convention. It's extremely exciting for me. And in 2022, I began filming and photographing the annual conventions. This hadn't been done before. Each year, I would document the table displays where members would showcase the exquisite pieces that they learned. I mean, the people in this club are true experts. They spend thousands of dollars on a single piece. And like I mentioned, before I did this, there was no video content that you could find, nothing online. And now VGCI is able to reach out to a new audience, and it's continued to grow. In 2025, VGCI celebrated their 25th annual convention. It was bigger and better than ever before. This time we visited the largest glass museum in the US in Corning, New York. There was so much to do that I ended up making 3 whole videos out of the one experience. The first is about stretch glass, which is an enhanced lecture. And as the presenter talks about the pieces he has, I've cut in close-ups of each piece of glass to really help you feel immersed in the presentation. The second is the world's only Vaseline glass museum, which we stopped at. I'll get to that in a moment. And the last was a full visit and experience of what this convention is all about. I covered the full trip details, all of the activities, and really dug in. I pushed myself to create the video, and I'm really proud of how it came out. So to circle back, I'd like to tell you a little bit more about 2 of my favorite videos I've done. The aforementioned museum video gave me a lot of satisfaction. It's located in Hawley, Pennsylvania, and it's the largest display of uranium glass on display to the public in the world. It is a world-class collection, and it's created by members of the same club, VGCI. There were some videos about this place already, but they were done with people's handheld phones. They had really bad resolution. They just couldn't capture the scope and scale. And as a viewer, I wanted to be able to see more and get a closer look at everything. So during my visit, I created stabilized video. I did panning shots, and I slowly presented the viewer with a shelf-by-shelf look. I filmed and released it in Ultra HD, and I wanted people to feel like they were there. This is where my cinematography training came in, knowing how to frame a shot, how to move a camera, and how to guide the viewer's eye. My other favorite video brings back lost media to the present. It honors the memory of famed glass researcher and historian William Heacock, another queer glass lover who was also taken away too soon. While digging through the glass research library in Corning, New York, because when I went there, I took an entire day just to spend it at the library, I stumbled upon a videotape that had been recorded the year before his passing. And there he was, Mr. Heacock, in the Fenton Glass Factory vault, talking about history and patterns. I'd only ever known him from his written work, and a lot of the other collectors I had known had only ever heard of that as well. No one had seen him on video. This video basically disappeared. So I dedicated myself to releasing it back into the world and to preserve his memory and legacy. The library isn't a public library, and they wouldn't let me borrow the cassette. It took about a year of searching, but eventually I was able to locate some footage. Next, I needed to track down the rights holder. I didn't want the video to be taken down for any type of copyright reason. I had to do it the right way. It took about 4 months of correspondence with different groups, but eventually I managed to find them. I explained my intentions and expressed my passion and how I just wanted to bring William Heacock out into the world. And to my surprise, it was the Fenton family that granted me permission. Yes, the ones that owned the factory and the video that he was in. They were thrilled that I actually wanted to take on the project and bring this back for a younger generation to see. So on my birthday this year, the gift that I gave to myself was sending this deeply personal video out into the glass collecting world. This project meant so much to me, and preserving the voice and passion of someone who came before me, someone who, like me, was queer and passionate about glass. I was building the bridge for those who could come after me and honoring his legacy at the same time. Next, I'd like to talk about my current video series and how that got started. After the 2024 election, I was definitely in a daze and I needed to escape. I started playing video games more, and that was all I could really do. I decided that I wanted to try my hand at streaming, which is where people will be on screen and play the games at the same time. It's a form of live producing, sort of like emceeing work, no script. I thought that while I was practicing and doing this, which didn't end up doing anything, it was really just for fun, I decided that I could probably do this with glass and have a bit of more of an entertainment side to it. So I decided that I would do it, but I needed to flesh out my release schedule and create a series that shortened the gaps between my videos. So my concept was to make an unboxing series. I purchased my glass from online and received shipments pretty regularly. You know, I came up with a name, a logo, a theme, and a video structure. And at the end of 2025, At the beginning of the year last year, I started making this series, but I didn't release any of it. In order to create a regular series, I needed to control the content flow. I recorded this backlog of videos while I was working on the VGCI series. When the first video episode of What's in the Box released in the fall, I had a backlog of 20 videos that were ready to be edited and released. Since the release of this first episode, a new video in the series has come out on a bi-weekly basis every Thursday. This coming week, I'll be releasing episode 11, and eventually the series will surpass the year mark before it ends. In creating and executing What's in the Box, I've not only created a recognizable brand that people look forward to, I've also dramatically enhanced my skills and abilities as a video maker. As any artist would know, practice makes polish. And over time, I had added multiple camera angles, enhanced audio, and learned about comic timing. And I've grown my abilities as an unscripted host. This skill development directly impacts the rest of the videos that I've made and has helped my overall quality raise. To support the videos, I engage in marketing campaigns, not paid ones because it's not really needed. This is a niche hobby and people are aware of what's out there. I've already got my link to the communities. All I had to do was just get it out. Sometimes it's hard to get people to discover new content, and my preferred way of people finding me is an organic way of searching and finding it on your own, not being forced down. Some communities can be negative and they don't want new ideas to come into play, but with the consistent releases, I've brought in new subscribers every week. I've been steadily building them and building my own audience. I can't wait to see what ends up happening at the end of the series. So as you've seen from my obsession and passion are behind the wheel of this endeavor. To keep things from going too far out of bounds, I would try to make time for myself to check in and do self-reflections. I measure this success in two ways. First, the feedback and engagement that I receive from collecting communities and individual users. Second, I check how I stack up to my own benchmarks. Am I getting better? Am I creating work that I'm proud of? And am I serving the community with those original goals? That's how I measure what matters. Despite TRC being a quiet, safe haven, I always manage to do too much with my life. I struggle with balancing this project with my full-time job, my career as a DJ, and also this year, County Arts Council. Through adversity comes clarity, and I've found that I'm finally in a time where I'm able to focus. This is a time I've looked for my whole life, being ready to just get a video out and work, and it's happening now. So although I've been building this brand since the beginning of 2022, I'm confident in telling you that this is just the beginning and that the best parts are still ahead. So why am I doing this? Why the videos? Why the Reddit community? Why the club involvement, the careful documentation, and the professional standards? It's because I'm doing this to keep people interested in the glass and so that it doesn't become forgotten. I want people to desire this glass and to treasure it for hundreds of more years to come. I'm building bridges to the next generation, the bridge that didn't exist when I started collecting. So guess what? You all are also a part of the journey. One of the goals that I had was to step into lectures and demonstrations, taking inspiration from Zach McCamey. To be honest, I'm really afraid of public speaking, and it's difficult. But this art talk was another chance for me to take a big swing and push myself into something that I didn't know how to do. So I did. I agreed, and I'm really proud of being able to put everything together for you today. I want to thank you all so much for your time today, and if you'd like to follow me or learn about me, I have some stickers that I brought in the back over there, and I'm going to happily talk about any of the pieces that I brought to showcase. But that's about the end of my lecture, and I'd like to see if anyone has any questions. Wendy.
What does this look like with the light off?
It's yellow.
It's yellow.
But uranium glass can come in a lot of different shades and colors. Green is the most common one, but you can find it in blue. It can be fully opaque as custard glass, or it can have tinges of pink and be Burmese glass. It's really, the uranium part is just, it's an oxide that's made from the mineral itself, and that's what gives it the UV properties, but you can put other colorants in and it'll change the color overall.
Why is it not being made any longer?
It's mostly because they're hoarding the uranium now. There were restrictions that were put in place, I think in the 90s, that sort of prevent like the import of it. There are a few people who make it, but mostly in the Czech Republic now. And the few glass artists that I know who work at blowing glass in the United States, they actually also import it from the Czech Republic. Yeah, tariffs also cost a lot of money. Yes?
You mentioned towards the beginning with your black box, the velvet. What was the other part that you said about the purple, reflecting the purple?
Yeah, so if you just have an open box and you're shining the light on it, the width of the beam of light is fairly wide, and if it catches the lens of the camera, it'll start creating a purple haze across the camera as well. You'll probably see it here. There are different lighting types that I use. In that box, I use fluorescent tube lightings, similar to the ones that you would have used for like a blacklight poster. But these are LED lights, which is the most common now. And if you look at how it hits the glass, you can see a bit of a purple bounce that's coming off of it. So what I've learned to do with the fluorescent tubes and keeping them somewhat obscured is it prevents, not all, but most of that color bleed in.
What do you use to deflect that?
You just really have to block it. Like, so I put panels in front of the box, like straight across the front, and then the light is behind, like, so the camera can't see it.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll even use pieces of paper or my own arm sometimes when I'm doing different types of shots. Suzette?
What was the difference between the Vaseline glass and the uranium glass? I didn't catch it.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't get to that part. This was more of a journey talk, but so Vaseline glass is just defined by that color that it is, and that's the yellow color. People often find that it has the highest concentrations of uranium in it, which causes it to glow extremely bright. But green glass is the most common, and that would just be a couple different types. It would be like green depression glass or just regular green uranium glass. So just a color difference, but it's all made of the same material. Wendy?
So back to the question you had at the beginning, when this was manufactured, did they know that it glowed?
I've heard that they did know a little bit because the UV rays that come through the sunlight also cause the illumination process. They wouldn't have anything as interesting as this, where the light is really strongly emitting from it. But if we were to open the window and take it over, for some of the thick pieces that I have from the Czech Republic, you will see the lines of the uranium just glowing brightly within it.
Does it fade over time? Does it dissipate?
The radiation or the color?
The color.
The color of it does dissipate, yes, but not that much. And I think that it's attributed more towards the formulas that they used. I have a few pieces and maybe one here I could show you that's more of a duller, darker color yellow than that really bright, almost green and yellow at the same time. But it's not really a widespread problem. People have told me, well, actually, I saw a piece once at VGCI where they took a compote and they put it in a particle accelerator, and it burned out all the uranium that was in it, and it was almost an amber color at that time. I hope that answers it.
Do you have a favorite piece?
I don't have a favorite piece. It's like choosing your favorite children, and you have thousands of children. It's tough. I definitely didn't bring it here today. But there are quite a few to collect. My specific thing that I'm most fascinated by is collecting pressed glass that comes from France. They had a lot of real whimsy and a lot of very interesting different pieces. The one I'm looking for right now is this candlestick, and it has grapes on the bottom and a drunk man hanging on a light post, and then the top of it is where you put the candle. And I don't know if they ever made it in Vaseline because the documentation is just so low and there's no real photo proof of it, but that's the piece that I've been keeping my eye out for a long time. David.
Are the pieces actually emitting radiation, and is there any issues around shipping and being detected as radioactive?
Yes and yes. They do emit a very low level of radiation. However, the further you get away from it, the more it reduces them. You could put a piece of paper over it and it would reduce the amount of radiation substantially. But yes, I don't buy from England specifically because customs will intercept it. And it's a tragedy because they'll destroy it afterwards. But in general, you can ship it in the US, you just say it's glass. Because that's what it was for a long time before people knew that it was uranium glass.
Paul,
Gerard.
I found out that a piece of paper actually blocks all the radiation with my Geiger counter when I was checking it, it went to 0. So that's why. So when you ship it, though, you never tell them that it's uranium glass.
Yeah, you don't want to let them know. Gary?
Yeah, when did they start making this? What was the sort of the golden age of?
So they think that it might have been a while back because glass was made by the Romans thousands of years ago. But uranium glass, the way it is now, came sort of from Eastern Europe and like the Bohemian region. And that was about like 1825 is where you'd start seeing it. They were making it here in the US in Boston and Sandwich. I think the oldest piece that I have is probably just like 1880s that's here. But I have a few pieces that date back to 1850. That's generally the golden years, was 1850 to maybe like 1915. Barbara.
Are there any health effects from dealing with so much of this radiation? And what about the people that worked constantly making that formula? Was there any kind of medical disability because of it?
Yeah, right now I don't think, well, I don't know what's happening to me, but I don't think that there are any effects. I was already crazy before I started collecting. But I have a lot of collecting friends who don't, there are no common themes that we've seen as a collector, but as a maker, that's completely different. This type of glass, you would never wanna like really sand it. People who did cut glass, they often died very young because of different poisonings from the materials like lead and things like that. And famously, they're the radium girls that would use the radioactive paint to paint clock faces on. And because they would dip the end of the paintbrush in there, they would touch it to their tongue, they ended up getting radiation poisoning that ultimately killed them at a very young age. So there are dangerous aspects to it, but as it is now, the radiation and radioactive aspects are sealed in the glass. So the only way to undo that is to either sand it down or break it into pieces. I see some sellers on eBay that try to turn it into sea glass, and I would never want to touch that radioactive sludge that you would get after running it through a rock tumbler.
So what does that mean? It means that it's rough?
For sea glass?
Yeah.
Well, they would break it up. Like if a plate was broken, they'd just smash it and they'd throw it in a rock tumbler with different grit to try and get that frosted look as if it had come from the sea. But it basically creates a super toxic sludge that you would never want to handle.
Would that apply to cobalt as well?
You know, it might, but because my focus has been on uranium, I haven't researched what could happen, but absolutely. And one of the other types of glowing glass pieces that I've got a little bit just on the rim of that bowl is cadmium, which is also a very deadly element. And that will cause red glass to glow orange or red under a UV light. Wendy?
You talked about the evolution of becoming a video producer, and I've seen your videos, and I feel like it would be a shame for everyone not to see one. They're so good.
Thank you so much. I didn't want to play like a full video for everybody, and the earlier shorter ones are pretty basic, but I do have some business cards on the back, as well as some of my stickers that have my Glass in the Dark website on it. So if you'd like to see some of the work that I do, you could visit my website and take a look at the different things that I've made.
It looks like most of these are poured into a mold, but the glass blowers ever
Yes.
experiment with it?
Yes, I'll just step over here. So the one that I mentioned with the cadmium, this was made in, I want to say 2022, by an artist I know out of Florida named James Whitehurst, and he is a glass blower. There are other glass blowers doing it, and there are lamp workers that make it as well. James used a technique where he overlaid the uranium on top of clear glass because it's so much more expensive now. But he's actually just recently branched out into using that beautiful Chet glass so that where the whole piece is solid. I probably can't show you here, but if you walk over to where it is at the table, you should be able to see that this actually has like a webbing of uranium that's laid over top of it.
Back to that same question, have you ever seen the molds that they've used or utilized?
Yeah, it's so fascinating to me. The VGCI club that I'm a part of, they do the convention in a different city each year, and it's always glass focused. So they've taken us to several museums where they'll show either the production being made. There are two different types of molds. As a glass blower, you can use a slip mold where you just sort of stick the glass blob into it and pull it out and continue to blow it, or full-on pressed pieces. One of the more well-known cadmium pieces is a Last Supper plate, and they have that at the Findlay, Ohio Glass Museum on display. They're absolutely beautiful. And I mean, with the patterns that you're seeing here, these are made by chiseling out from, I think, titanium is what they make them out of. I mean, they're, not only are they made by hand, but the designs are all made by hand. Metal molds. Yeah, they're usually 3 pieces. And I love the press details and the different aspects, like the textures they can get. If you have a moment, take a look at some of the ones on the back. They're what was called lacy glass that was originated by like Boston and Sandwich in the Cape Cod region. And part of the reason they have so many stipples and designs was to hide the fact that the glass had some impurities in it, either bubbles or foreign objects. But the overall look is just absolutely stunning. We're just about out of time, but I could take, I'll do 2 because Rebecca, you're first.
I've also seen old beads made out of Vaseline glass.
Oh yeah.
Yellow and the darker green.
Yeah. The beads are also another part, and there are collectors who are dedicated to just doing that. And I'm happy to share that the company that I work with of the Czech Republic, they're actually a bead manufacturer first. So the tradition is being kept alive.
Yeah, Czech glass beads.
Mm-hmm. Your last question?
How many pieces do you think are in the universe?
I can't even tell you how many I own.
10,000, 50,000?
Oh no, there's a lot. There's a lot. It was produced all over Europe. It was produced all over the US, sometimes in Japan as well, and maybe a few Middle Eastern countries. I would say it's in the millions.
Was it ever utilitarian, like a butter dish, and actually put butter on it, no one thought much of it?
Yes, that was exactly how they were used before. Only now that we know about the radioactive aspect and that supernatural glowing quality, that's when people have really stepped back from using it nearly as much. If you come to my house, they're in salt shakers, but or I use my salt shakers. But yes, I have some books in the back if anyone's interested, and you can look through the different items that they've made out of uranium glass. But there's kitchenware was a big thing that was made, especially. I think I've got somewhere over 3,000. Yeah, but because of how I use the glass, you know, I'm making a video right now that's going to be 7 different types of uranium glass. And so they're all in different bins, but I have everything sort of cataloged. And so I can't keep it all on display. Like, they're all the little actors in, or yeah, they're the talent that's in my videos that I make. And it's not a realistic number to keep in my house. And I recently was given a collection by Gerard, who is also an incredible collector, an incredible gift. And the pieces in the collection actually help flesh out the colors that I'm missing. So I'm going to be able to create better quality videos that represent more of what's on the market for collectors. And I want to thank you again for doing that, Gerard. Thank you, thank you. I'll take one more question and then we'll end.
Make sure you use that water dish. I got one more question.
Well, I want to get someone right behind you. I'm sorry. Miana.
I just had, I guess, a big question for the last question, but you mentioned a few times connecting with other queer collectors, and I was just wondering if you could speak more about that, maybe about that connection or about that community.
Yeah, it's funny how many communities overlap together, and even if we aren't in the same groups or even the same political spectrum, we all manage to get along. There is a huge population of queer people who collect glass. There's people within the trans community. There's crossover between people who collect rocks and minerals. They like that as well. The goth community and goth aesthetic is part of where I came from. And there's also the different ones who are nerds for the glass manufacturers as well. So all those people sort of join together to create this amalgam of a diverse community. And as a community moderator, it's a bit of a circus sometimes, but everyone is still polite and they still treat each other with respect. Yeah, I get you. Just
My last question.
yeah.
You've been obsessed with neon green for years and years and years.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Does it happen in nature at all? The color?
Neon green?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. Bugs, lizards. Gerard has an awesome example of a uranium trinitrite that was, yeah, fireflies. But the trinitrite that you have is that yellow, bright yellow green, and it glows. And it was created over at the Trinity site when the bomb was detonated. There was uranium that was under the ground, and it basically turned it into glass. Not really a force of nature, but it is possible. Well, thank everyone. Thank you all so much. Thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions personally if you'd like to talk.